Hello everyone and welcome to Eclipse season. This is Sky here to do some channeling and psychic insight on the upcoming strong solar eclipse we will be having at the beginning of July. So what I always say with major eclipses is that the energy will tend to last around a month on both sides of it. So this energy has probably been in effect since the time of June 2nd and will probably last until the time of August 2nd. And of course, when you have a solar eclipse that is so connected to the outer planets, which represent longer periods of time, which have slower transit periods, these effects and energies that are found here will likely be found to be the catalyst of something which can potentially last quite a long time in your life. So yes, these messages are most applicable and relating to the catalyst that you will experience on July 2nd, but the effects that you may find and the resonance of the messages may last, anywhere from up to a month, 2 months, or even the rest of the year. As some of you might even see that the messages from the Plutonian solar eclipse last year may even still resonate for you now. I will link that video below. But anyway, it is eclipse season, and that means that there's a lot on the line. To give you guys a little bit of a precursor and an introduction to eclipses, the general concept and spiritual implications of an eclipse are that of something coming into your life and something leaving your life. There is usually a quite obvious give and take. There are lines that are blurred and then made clear again. There is direct action and there is, prominent darkness and lightness. So there is a change in lighting, there is a change in tone of the energy that is very cognizant when an eclipse comes in. And this one is very strong. It's not going to be a super visible eclipse. I will write in the description below where all it will be visible from and the exact timing, but sometimes the eclipses which are less visible can have a bigger impact because the action of give and take that we're talking about happens in a portion of your life that is less visible from what I've seen and what I've experienced with eclipses. So this eclipse is also very watery. It is happening with the sun and moon conjunct at 10 degrees Cancer, and it is loosely trine Neptune, which just went retrograde in Pisces. And the aspects that make this solar eclipse very strong and prominent are not so much the eclipse itself, but it is actually the transits and configurations which are happening during the eclipse, which add to the weight and the foundation and the catalyst aspect of the eclipse itself. So among those transits, we have the Jupiter square Neptune, Jupiter semisextile Saturn, Saturn sextile Neptune, Capricorn triple conjunction. There are a lot of things that are weighty and really fantastical even. There's a strong contrast. There's a strong, choice, I feel, as it's very easy to choose a very fantastical experience for yourself or a very safe and secure experience for yourself. We have the wildly fantasy-oriented, positivity, spontaneous, almost fictional element of Jupiter square Neptune, whereas we also have this very real, unquestionable, strong, powerful Capricorn energy coming up too, and they're all retrograde. So all of these configurations and elements are working not in their most healthy way, and that will channel through for different people depending on what placements these are falling in your natal chart, what houses they're in, what they're touching. But for everybody, there are still collective messages that can be taken. And without further ado, I will get into some of the intuitive messages that I'm feeling at a psychic level for most people who are watching this video relating to this solar eclipse. So the first thing that's coming up is what lies ahead, what is in front of us, and deciding what that is. When I look to this chart, I see that opposition of the Cancer placements at the eclipse point to the especially Saturn node conjunction retrograde in Capricorn. So looking directly at something which we thought was strong, sturdy, safe, secure, and realizing that that has gone completely out of control. This is a factor that most people are dealing with, an experience that most people are dealing with, and it is obvious. This is what I like about this transit. I like that this eclipse gives a sense of direct view of where the anticipated healthiness or the anticipated strength and security has gone awry, has gone retrograde. Okay, so one big major blessing and positive point, because this is not something that's bad, is the ability to see what isn't right and the ability to concede and make concessions to that. So I feel that concessions can be made here. I feel that we are capable of replanning or restocking or reorienting ourselves to what is right. There is a struggle for adaptability, I will say, and that is coming elsewhere in the chart too. Jupiter retrograde. We have a big mutable influence just with Jupiter and Neptune and Venus. We have a T-square almost of mutable energy, although that is not exact at all. So things are scrambled. Things are really pushing for adaptability, really pushing for flexibility, yet retrograde. You know, there's a struggle to be flexible. There's a struggle to adapt. There is perhaps even a fear of moving too quickly. Again, I see this opposition of the eclipse point and Saturn and Pluto as looking directly at our fears, looking directly at something we thought was secure and that having moved retrograde and that being something that breeds turmoil or fear within us. Again, with the Pluto retrograde aspect of it, there's a permanence and there is a feeling of stagnation and a feeling that transforming this or evading this situation is not natural or not easy. I feel this transit to definitely represent a paradigm shift, and something that I've been saying for a while that I mentioned specifically in my Neptune retrograde video was that by around June 21st, we wanted to have decisions made, ideas, plans in action, because if we really struggle to do that after then, it can really stack up till around November. I feel this date of July 2nd, when this eclipse happens, to be the true turning point and to be the true paradigm shift of those certain decisions. So by this period of time, we want to be placed where we thought we needed to be, or we need to have perhaps faced a fear or done something that we weren't anticipating and be placed in it, because it's easy, I think, for things to really solidify themselves after this time. I feel that the past with this energy, as again it is Sun and Moon in Cancer conjunct lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, of course. So this deals with the past and being opposite. Also a past-centric sign of Capricorn with Saturn and Pluto. The past is hard to access after this point. So if we needed to go back to something, if we needed to return to something, I feel that it needs to be done before this time because it will be more difficult to access it later. Again, this is like a mark, sort of like a cell turnover that happens every 7 years in the body, where there is a death, I feel, with this transit. There is an old side of yourself which leaves. And something that I mentioned as well in one of my Patreon chats was a sense of being relieved of your energy, or a sense of being relieved of something which has been circulating within for a long time. Almost like the energy of a black hole, really having something perhaps taken from you. And this is also the energy of a solar eclipse, especially when it connects to these types of planets. It's not all a bad thing, because I feel that toxins or codependent elements, parts of our personality or our energy which were hurting us or causing illness, can be relieved of us now or can be pulled out. But it's important to affirm with yourself and see what you are being relieved of. Important to see what is being taken, what is being pulled away, because I also sense that it's easy to lose time here, and I sense that this catalyst time of July 2nd really prompts a relationship with time and prompts a need to be aware of time and a need to be aware of how you sink your time, how you expel time, how you move through time. So yeah, we are talking about scheduling, regimenting, delegating. Again, this is a Sun opposite Saturn. And whenever I see Sun opposite Saturn in a natal chart, I always know that this type of person individually has this sort of constant looming sense of burden, or always having something to face the next day, always dreading the sense of duty, because it's strong. It's a big one. There's a strong sense of duty and a strong sense of making sure that everyone gets what is fair. So that's an interesting thing of this eclipse too. I feel that a lot of people are really concerned with doing the right thing and acting within their integrity. And I think a lot of people are very much challenged to act within integrity. Sun opposite Saturn does tend to challenge the individual to do what is appropriate and right, and that's not always what is comfortable. And that's a distinction that I feel definitely needs to be made in this video, is doing the right thing, doing the appropriate thing, doing the what do I want to say, the virtuous thing doesn't mean doing the comfortable thing. Okay, and we have to remember that during this time. This is not the most comfortable eclipse I've ever seen. In fact, I find this to be very evoking of discomfort. And that's not to be negative. That's not to be, wow, this is a hard transit. There are more, what do I want to say? There are more high tension transits than this. There are more psychologically tormenting transits than this. But this is not comfortable. And the discomfort that is seen in this transit is imperative toward healing past wounds and overcoming a personality flaw for some people, or it's not even a flaw, especially for people who might be seen as pushovers, or people who concede to others very easily, people who are extremely impressionable. This period of time will definitely force those types of people's hands to doing something active and something that is not just at the disposal of other people. So extremely passive types of personality types, extremely impassive people will have more of a rough time with this transit because it does demand some sort of action. Again, Cancer is a cardinal sign, Capricorn is a cardinal sign, Sagittarius, Gemini, and Sagittarius and Gemini certainly are forward-moving, action-taking signs, whereas Neptune in Pisces is a very passive, pulled back, as well as the Sun in Cancer. It can be in a way. Cancer is odd in that way because it is a receptive cardinal sign, which makes it quite enigmatic in its way. But I feel that is why this is so difficult for many people, because there's a big desire maybe to be more passive, or to go with the flow, or to float through life, to move through intuitively. But nonetheless, there is a looming sense of having to do something very rigid, composed, and developed. So it can be torturous for some. For those of us who have a more sensitive nature, for those of us who are constantly working in the intuitive sense, constantly doing what feels right, constantly moving through in a watery way, this time can be a challenge unless you can see the need for balance, and you can see that the nature of moving so seamlessly, the nature of moving so intuitively, is meant to be an accent to a well-honed, structured way of being. It, in and of itself, is not a way of being. It's an accent. That's just the message that I'm getting. So yes, I sense that people with the recent last few years of transits have become a bit too tied into intuitive. Intuitive might not be the right word. Too much emphasis placed on ebb and flow. Too much emphasis placed on the moon. Again, this is a Sun-Moon conjunction in Cancer. Eclipse. Opposite Saturn and Pluto. Okay, a big tug of war between ebbing and flowing with my decision making and being constantly set in my decision making. Both have to be acknowledged and both have to be seen. And now I am hearing that this transit also deals with, trusting yourself and trusting the ebb and flow too. So I guess it really comes down to integration of intuitive action and developed action. And honing those two things together in this way, for those of us who can successfully do that during this time, is where the true power emerges and finds itself. And Cancer Capricorn oppositions, despite being difficult, can be some of the most rewarding ones when it comes to security, stability, big promotions, big payouts, big deals can be made here that are very lucrative or very rewarding. Also, I feel that money can literally burn through during this time. I find this transit to be expensive. Okay, I think that this is an expensive transit in general. I think that it's a debt oriented transit, and I think that it's dramatic one way or another. So a lot of money can be made, a lot of money can be spent, a lot can be saved, a lot can be accrued. It's just a lot. It's a heavy concentration of matter in general. Again, that comes to the Neptune Jupiter square too, where a lot of people can be living in a fantasy world, or a lot of people can be overindulgent. Both of those transits, Jupiter and Neptune retrograde, can deal with indulgence, indulging the mind and indulging the senses. Jupiter retrograde can see you spending too much on food, or too much on pleasures, too much on things which are unnecessary, whereas Neptune retrograde can see your mind indulging too much in anxieties, paranoias, hysterias, small strands of reality which do not need that much investment of. Neptune really pushes the envelope there. Another thing I would notice that we do have this Mercury Mars conjunction in Leo, which to me, I'm happy that it's direct. I'm happy that it isn't retrograde. Mercury is in shadow here, but not retrograde yet, but it will be moving retrograde soon. Whenever I see Mercury and Mars together, I think of temper. I think of mean thoughts. I think of losing control of one's mind at times, or a very critical mindset. And this can be good in some ways. It's a good problem solving energy. It's a good critical thinking energy, but it has to be channeled in a way of aid, in a way of helping, in a way of solving problems that are solvable by yourself. Because I often see a Mercury Mars conjunction as losing the temper, or an active mind that keeps you awake at night, even chemical balance as well with Mercury Mars. In Leo, it's, you know, it's not a bad conjunction, it's just very fiery. Okay, we do actually have a fire trine here, although it is way out of orb, but all of the fire signs are activated: Chiron and Aries, Mercury, Mars in Leo, and Jupiter in Sag. So it's this period of time is kind of like a firework, is kind of like a really big, rise and explosion, and that needs to be worked with appropriately. So when do you light the fuse for the firework? When do you activate yourself to do what you need to do in your life? I sense that activation can be a little bit misplaced. Again, Jupiter Neptune square. It's very expelling to me. There's a purging or a detox also that happens here. So important not to be taking in too many toxins, watching what you eat, watching what goes into your body. I've talked about this in general since Saturn has been retrograde in Capricorn. It does have health implications. Luckily, we do have a well-placed Venusian energy about. So Venus in Gemini, Uranus in Taurus. There's a love opportunity here, positive love relationships, enjoyment of beauty, enjoyment of refinement, enjoyment of adventure or traveling as well. That's possible. Although Jupiter retrograde can make traveling a bit of an ordeal, but it's unlikely for most people that would go too awry. Try to pursue beautiful things during this time. I always say if Venus is healthy, look to Venus, look to the Venusian aspects. And Venus is in Gemini, so it's in Mercury's sign, which is also, going retrograde this month. But I also feel that mitigates it in a way. And then the Venus-Jupiter opposition helps to mitigate the Jupiter-Neptune square as well, even though that is fading. So with Venus and Gemini, I feel like we look towards communication to find relief, to find mitigation. That truly is key. And I mentioned this in my June benevolence messages on Patreon. If you want to join, I will put the link below. It's great. Communication really is key, and the throat chakra, the ability to communicate how you're feeling, how you're doing, how you're going to do, so that you don't blindside people, is important during this time. I feel that people can so easily be blindsided with this energy. That's actually the word I've been looking for this whole time, and it's just now come through. So it's kind of you have to watch your blind side. You have to be careful not to blindside other people, to not shock other people, and to not be sudden, okay? This Capricorn triple conjunction really tests us in that way, because there can be appropriate motivation to be sudden. There can be appropriate motivation to blindside someone, or should I say perceived appropriate motivation, but the true appropriate motivation for this type of thing is rare. And there are situations, I suppose, where blindsiding people is important. If we're being held hostage, or if we're being, something terrible is being thrust upon us. I mean, yeah, we gotta get out of Dodge, but there are so many situations I feel right now where people are tempted to just leave things behind, or tempted to just disconnect from the past, or really relying on their own autonomy to see them through. And it's karmically important, I'm hearing, to communicate with those who your actions affect strongly what is going on. And if you don't know it yourself, communicate that. So if you're very unsure yourself, rather than affirming people's, guesses, or affirming people's, opinions when they're not right, try to make it clear that you're not sure what you need to do. Try to make it clear that, I am trying to be intuitive with what's going on, and I'm really not certain what judgment I'm making right now. That is okay too, although it is especially rewarding to be able to come to a solid conclusion if you can, and then be able to communicate that to people if you can. And as with any eclipse, I always encourage anyone to think about what they don't need anymore in their lives, to really meditate on it, to really identify the toxic elements, because that truly is the purpose of eclipse energy, is to allow things which are no longer serving to go. And sometimes if we get very ego wrapped up in that, or we don't have a lot of conscious thought about what deserves a place in our life, the universe can get a bit tricky. It's not tricky for the sake of being conniving. It's tricky to open our eyes to our own power, and to open our eyes to see what we can choose to take on and let go of. It can get a bit tricky in the sense that you may see yourself lose something that you didn't know you needed to lose, and that process of understanding that it needed to go can be a bit of a maze for some people. And that's not, again, this isn't the universe trying to be tricky for the sake of being tricky. It's the process of cleansing the complications that we impose on ourselves through going through a complicated experience and seeing that that wasn't really necessary. And again, my whole point, this is what eclipses are for, is to identify this and to make our lives easier by pulling something out that didn't need to be there, and hopefully replacing it with something through our own actions that is more authentic and tailored toward what is energetically fitting for ourselves as individuals. So I've come to you all with this video a bit early because I think that we all need a bit of reflection before this transit jumps into place. Please like this video and give it a thumbs up, because that really helps YouTube to put it out there and be seen. I think that a lot of people can benefit from this information. I've worked very hard on putting some points together and channeling it, so please hit the thumbs up button if it resonated for you. And also, if you wouldn't mind subscribing to my channel, I'm so close to hitting 60,000 and I've been very excited for it. You can always unsubscribe if the content ends up not being right for you, but if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that. All of my links are in the description box below. I am on Patreon. I have a ebook coming out soon, which is up for pre-order, about the moon, and just a lot of other stuff on my channel that might be interesting to you. So go over and check it out. All of the links are below. Good luck in this eclipse season, everyone. It is a defining, beautiful, and exceptionally turning point period of time that shows us after it being very well placed if we can just overcome the discomfort here and now. So anyway, everyone, we will be talking soon. Much love. Bye.